Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far, and welcome to episode 19 of the Breaking Point podcast. It's been an off week, of course, from the CDL. That does not mean it has not been a dramatic week. Crazy amounts of roster stuff to talk about this week, really capped off yesterday by this remarkable Los Angeles Thieves Huke situation we're going to dive into. Before we get into that, really appreciate a like on the video if you guys do enjoy it. Rating and all the Spotify stuff is greatly appreciated as well. We're available on the audio platforms down below if you guys would like to check us out on other platforms, of course, all that good stuff. Let's dive in. All right, Austin, how's it going? Crazy week once again. I mean, we've got so much roster stuff to discuss today. There's also been many changes. I mean, that we've got the whole weapon meta updates and shift to go into. We've also got like the map set changes as well. So yeah, how have we been faring?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Just getting back into the groove of things. Basically just get ready for stage 4, the Elite Season 4, and just pretty much hanging out until the games start.
Absolutely. I mean, let's just dive right in. First thing to discuss, Seattle Surge. What is going on over there? Since we made the episode last week, like, I don't even know where to begin with some of the stuff that's happened this time. We'll begin with Seattle. Decimate, of course, joins their team very briefly for like a couple of weeks. They were looking for a replacement for Looney. They found Decimate. He was like the only option that was really remaining there in the challenger scene that they could acquire. They wanted Vivid. We'll talk about Vivid and that move to Dallas in a second here. But okay, so Decimate comes in. Obviously, doesn't have the greatest showing. I mean, they didn't win a series with him, but they weren't winning a series with him before we joined anyway. And then, to our understanding, he's basically decided just to leave the team. Now, I guess he thinks from a couple of perspectives, all right, I might be able to make more money in challenges because if I win some tourneys, there's actually some money to be made. Whereas if I lose every single match in the Pro League, I'm not winning any prize money at all. At the same time, you might be thinking, all right, if I leave Seattle, then I don't get my stock destroyed in this. Well, this is maybe his thought process. I don't think it's a good one, but he might be thinking, all right, I don't get my stock destroyed by being just awful for the rest of the year by getting bodied by the best teams. However, the way I see it, like you're not a very good look for a lot of these pro teams that are maybe thinking, all right, okay, Decimate, potential target for next season. Now you've joined the squad. What's it going? Well, you've just dipped off the scene. Yeah, not the greatest look, Austin, from a number of perspectives, but just really strange stuff. I think it just shows what a disaster Seattle Surge is if they bring in a new player and all of a sudden that player just wants to dip a couple of weeks later. I'm not really sure if it says more about Decimate or Seattle, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about this because there's so many different angles to look at. Like, looking at it from Decimate's POV, obviously Seattle's not in a good place. They're practically eliminated from champs, and as soon as he steps back into the AM scene and the elite scene, he's going to be on a top team like instantly. And there's actually a decent amount of money in the elite. Obviously, nothing compared to the majors that we still have 2 more of. But there's a decent amount of money, and the AM champs, which is rumored. I don't think there's any like news about it or any prize pools or anything, but I'm assuming he thinks it's going to be pretty substantial and that he'll have a good chance at taking it home. So, like, prize pool wise, money wise, if that's your objective to get out of this, I understand it. Right? It's understandable. I heard people saying like he wanted to save his stock. I don't agree with quitting on your team if you're going to try to save your stock. I would have put more stock in his basket if he kind of helped turn Surge around, right? If Surge started placing like top 8, top 6, then I'm putting more stock in him because he's the new factor coming into the team, and he was actually doing pretty well in SnD, but he was kind of lackluster on the respawn. So like I wanted to see him like grow. I wanted to see if he was going to progress in the next stage or kind of just stay where he is, and it kind of like from the Seattle side, it's just like you quit on your team, right? It's not a good look. So there's like so many different ways to spin it, and there's so many different moving pieces that it's like really, it's hard to be like really angry with it with the move and like really like bash it, but it's also hard to like understand it. So I'm like really indifferent. Like, thank God I'm not a GM for that.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. I mean, exactly. Like, that's what's really strange to me is that the pros obviously talk to each other, and clearly his team aren't happy with it. And, for good reason. Like, if your team just sketches on you, you've got to find a new fourth, you're not going to be happy. Other pros in the league are going to hear them talking about him, and like, it's just not going to end well. Let's just be honest here. And as an organization as well. You don't want someone who's a liability at the best of times. So yeah, the way that, well, someone has handled it, we'll talk about John here, because he's taken a different tack where he obviously really likes his challengers team right now on the Easter squad with Jerd there, I'm pretty sure Sib's there, Gravity, and that's the squad they've been running with as of late. He's very happy with his situation as it is, and supposedly he's been getting offers from pro teams, and he's like, well, look, at the end of the day, I don't need to join your team. It's a different situation to me to Decimate, because if you're Desi, you've joined a team and now you're dipping. That's a lot different to just saying, okay, I'm actually going to turn down this offer to maintain the stock and give myself a great chance in the challenger scene as well. So it's really interesting. I wonder if John's kind of like hoping for expansion next year, or exactly what the plan is, or whether you think there could be some crazy roster shuffles anyway this season, to the point where John and the rest of the guys that he wants to play with are getting picked up again. It's interesting, but I think John's probably taken a better tack here than Decimate is from my perspective.
Yeah, I definitely respect John's approach a lot more. Obviously, Decimate didn't know Seattle was going to be so bad when he joined them, but like John is definitely thinking about the future. I don't think he's worried about getting a franchise spot next year, because he's obviously proved this past couple, like 2 months, he's just been really like lights out. So he kind of knows he has a spot in the league. And why join a Paris, a Seattle, LAG? I don't know who's offered him anything, but like why, if it's not like a top team, why join them if they're like going to be eliminated from champs, right? I think he's very content. He ranks Jerd as one of his best teammates he's ever had, like best sub duo, right under App, which says a lot to me. He loves Sib and Tom. They have a really strong unit. So I think what he's doing right now is showcasing how strong he can be when he's around a team that he helped build. So what he can tell orgs next season is like, look, when we have a team that is built around like has a strong foundation, like I will thrive. So if he joins a team right now, which he did not help build, and then gets thrown into the mix and performs badly, like that could hurt his stock next year. And then 100%, like a high certainty spot is no longer high certainty, and then it's all in flux. And not only that, but with these 1-in-1 contracts, like let's say he signs to like, let's just say Seattle. I don't know. I think he would be pinned next year if it's still the 1-on-1 contracts. I really don't know how it works, but if it's on a 14-day contract, it's not really worth it, I would say. Be pinned there next year just in case. So there's a lot of factors in play, but overall, I do respect his decision that he made, and I understand it. I definitely do.
I think it's a cool one, and like as you say, the fact that that John Jerd sub duo seems to be a thing, like that's really cool to me. I'd love to see Jerd back in the league as well. I think he's had a hard time the last couple of seasons. Certainly a player one of my favorite players to watch play COD of all time when he's on form. Jerd is just something else on the map. I thought it was crazy as well. I got a few comments. I was talking about this in today's video, asking like, who the hell is this John guy? Like, is this just, what's his actual gamer tag? Like, some of these people, understandably, right? Because John hasn't been around the last couple of years, but people don't know who John is, right? They don't know about his pedigree and the fact he's been around since Black Ops 1, and he's won multiple championships over multiple games with multiple teams. World champion in 2016, largely considered second, third best SMG of all time, obviously behind Scump and then aBeZy. So I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about, right? That John's kind of unknown for a lot of the newer members of the scene. That's kind of one of the reasons I think it'd be good to have him back and see what he's capable of, right? Once again,
His pedigree is amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's talk about some of the replacements for these teams. So Seattle go and get Classic, which, I mean, fair enough. All things considered, it's not the worst move in the world. I mean, there's not really many options you could actually have got. Classic obviously has previous experience playing with Octane, had some good success with him and Looney actually back in Black Ops 3. Of course, he's sitting on the bench, but the Black Ops 3 Rise team, the Infinite Warfare Luminosity Gaming team, of course, that won Anaheim that year and came second at the Stage 1 playoffs to Splice at that event. So Classic and Octane certainly have some history together. At the same time, it's interesting for Paris. We'll talk about that in a second. We'll do the CL stuff first. It's not exactly like Classics adding a huge amount of slaying power to this team. I think that in theory, the weakness that they had at the start of the season has remained their weakness through pretty much the entirety of the season. And they're now at a point where, okay, they have Classic for Looney in effect. And, okay, when Seattle were at their best, it was in stage 2, kind of mid-stage 2, when Pristini was like properly going off, and maybe Classic will help facilitate that a little bit more. And if that's the case, then Seattle still have some scary pieces, but it's like the problem is for them that I see at Austin is they're 12th in the league. In order to get top 8, you don't just need to be a top 8 team. You need to become like a top 6 team to actually get the points to get up to top 8. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And get results like that. And I just really can't see a world in which this move makes that happen.
Yeah, this move's tough. Because I actually, weirdly enough, I think Nick Classic is in a better position as a player. I think having Pristini as a sub duo and having Gunless and Octane in the back line, I think that's an upgrade for him personally. I think he's in mesh really well with Pristini. I think he might be an upgrade over Decimate for this team in terms of pacing and playing as a unit and as a straight up entry man. Because I think when we've seen Prestini be his best, he was kind of like that second or third sub in Black Ops 4. He was that second Maddox, the faster Maddox. So I think this is actually going to do a lot for Prestini, and I think it's going to do pretty well for Nick. He had really good numbers actually in stage 1 and 2, so I'm expecting more of that. Paris overall, I don't know if this was the issue necessarily. I don't really know what is the issue. I think it's really what it's been the entire season is like the flex and the second SMG, like who's running it, what is the pacing like? Because I think that's been their major issue all season long, even when they had fire. So I don't know if this fixes much. Obviously, they bring in Zap, which I think Zap is pretty much just like Nick in terms of role, pacing, performance. So it's going to be interesting on that front. But for Seattle, I think this should be do pretty well for the team.
Yeah, I think I'd be inclined to agree. And the Paris one it's just strange, man. Like these changes these bottom tier teams are making, like just shuffling players. London gets Zap he's off to Paris now. Classic comes from Paris to Seattle. Zap goes the other way. It's like I really don't know what's going on there anymore. But yeah, I mean the Zap move for Paris. I just can't see how this is anything other than, I mean, a lateral move that maybe you can get a little bit better. But like the problem on that team, as you kind of diagnosed, is that Aqua was really good at the start of the year. Scraps is a great slayer. There's no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, like it doesn't seem like there's anyone on that team incredibly willing to put their lives on the line for the team and consistently do what's necessary on the map to actually win games. Because I mean, I remember I said it when we did the draft right at the start of the season when I put Scraps in on my bench. I was like, Scraps is great at getting kills. He might not be great at winning events, but he's great at getting kills, which he does get kills. No matter, you know, you can give him an SMG, give him an AR, he gets kills. And Aqua kind of does that as well, and Temp kind of does that as well. It's like you kind of saw it on the Moscow map, especially when you know, it was, I mean, what were they playing exactly? I remember there was a Moscow hardpoint during stage 3 where all three of them, Temp, Scraps, and Aqua, all at ARs. And I remember RCs was talking about it, like, what are these lads playing at? They've just got Classic sitting in the hill. And if they're still going to do that with Zaptius on the team, I just can't see how this is any way going to improve them, right? I mean, it seems to be a weird thing with this squad where they've got players that have talent and pedigree and ability, but they're not really building a team that's actually going to find success. They kind of need an Asim, I would argue, and like another good slaying SMG. So I think if the classic move makes Seattle better, then probably Paris find themselves. I mean, maybe they just drop down below Seattle. I don't really know. Like power rankings, both those teams are 11th, 12th right now. I'd say Austin.
Yeah, I just don't see this move like transforming the roster into a top 8 roster because they still do have a little bit of life for the playoffs. So if they were to do something, it has to be pretty drastic to kind of like kick it in the gear. So I just don't know if this is the move that does that. And I kind of I like Zap as a player, so like it's tough. I just feel like they have 3 ARs on this team pretty much with how they play, and they just need someone to really kick it in for that second SMG.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess speaking of SMGs, perfect time to talk about Dallas Empire because they make this change. And Well, I mean, it's very interesting, and it's especially interesting after yesterday's news, at least as a recording. But okay, FeLo comes in for Dallas during, well, pretty much the entirety of May. They don't have a great result with him. I mean, they had a pretty tragic performance at the major. They go 0-6 map counts. And it was like, all right, okay, something's got to change here. I don't think anyone really saw this team winning the World Championship, which of course is what they're trying to do. Illey wasn't really working on the SMG. FeLo wasn't bringing an incredible amount of slaying. Crimsix dropped off dramatically from stage 1, stage 2. Shotzzy actually has been stepping up, at least statistically, and looks great on the map, but doesn't really have any help, to be honest. If there's anyone in the league right now that the hashtag somebody help whoever, probably somebody else Shotzzy should be how it is at the moment. Maybe that should have been the Spotify secret code word of the week. But anyway, they bring in Vivid, right, from Los Angeles Guerrillas. And there's interesting part to this. I guess firstly we'll touch on the impact on the team itself, because in effect, what you've done here is traded Huke for Vivid over the course of about 4 weeks, which I don't know what that does. I mean, the questions about Huke are seriously being raised right now, as we'll get into with the Los Angeles Thieves stuff. But this is a move I like. I think that if you're going to make a move like this, you want to put Illey back on the AR. That's probably where he was more comfortable. I think a lot of people are talking about, okay, how is Illey still surviving in this team? Probably if he was on the Thieves, he'd have been benched long ago, just seeing how their coaching staff seem to want to do it. But I'm a big fan of what he can bring to a team. It just doesn't seem like he's got there. And we talked about his Search and Destroy being weak last time. I think, it's worth a go with Illey, giving him another shot in a different lineup, and putting him back to an AR where he was somewhat more comfortable, but still not spectacular by any means. Vivid, I think, can be a great partner to Huke, or well, not to Huke, of course. Could be a great partner to Huke as well. Not going to be the case though. So, Vivid and Shotzzy, of course, are going to be the duo on this team. Lots of pace here. Illey's going to be a fast-paced second AR. Krim is like a pretty quick main AR, to be honest. Like, he's not, you could argue he fits better into that kind of faster AR type position. So I think this team's going to be really quick. Vivid, we saw in LAG, not only can he put an incredible amount of pressure on, but he can have takeover maps at moments as well. So I think, like, of all the options that are available, Austin, I think that this is probably the one that gives Dallas the best shot of actually becoming a top team again.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I like Vivid a lot for the pressure he brings. He's not going to be there to be like this leader. He's not going to be there to do anything crazy. He's going to be the entry man. He slides in first. He helps shots take a lot of pressure off of Shotzzy, which is what he's going to do pretty well. I do like putting Illey back onto the second AR because I just feel like he was really underperforming on the SMG. I feel like obviously he just wasn't comfortable on the map, which it affects how you play a lot. So if you're not comfortable, you're not going to be putting up good numbers. And this putting him on the second AR, I mean, he's got to perform. I think he's the X factor for this team. I think it's got to be time he clicks in and shows us the potential he's had for last couple of years and just really kicks it up a gear because this team needs like a second star. Whether it's Vivid, whether it's Krim, whether it's Illey, like they need a second star to put it up with to be there with Shotzzy and to do that 1-2 punch. Because right now, they didn't have that the last stage. And I think that was a major reason why when they faced the top teams, they were kind of struggling. So I think it's really on Illey to be like improve a lot from what he was to now. So I don't know. I feel like they're definitely in contention to be a top 4 team now.
Yeah, it feels like do or die for me, fairly, right? It's like, all right, this is your shot. We've had a number of different alterations. This is like, Illey, you're back on a roll where you've been better. This is the time to perform. And if it doesn't go your way, then, I don't know, we're going to make moves before stage 5 or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, interesting I don't know. It's just crazy how things have worked out, honestly, these last several weeks with Vivid now fighting himself on the Dallas team. The other angle of it really was regarding Seattle, because Seattle, well, Octane said that they wanted to get Vivid from LAG, and clearly that didn't happen. And it's like, well, we thought, okay, the speculation was, all right, did Seattle just not want to pay enough money, or did Los Angeles Guerrillas decide, all right, let's just keep him for the long term? There's a couple of angles there, right? Because if I'm LAG, I don't really want to get rid of Vivid, to be honest. Like, he's potentially a great piece of my future lineup. Surely that's the whole point if you're LAG, is that you've got to build for the future, right? Vivid is the ideal person to build around for the future. The rest of the guys you've got, you're really hoping on a couple of your guys on the academy roster coming good. I don't really think Exceed's gonna, Exceed hasn't proven anything. You've got Mental still sitting there, Nero Poison, of course, and Chino's now in the starting team. So from the LAG side, it's like you've just let one of your potential stars go. And of course, Dallas had the Huke money to play around with, so maybe they came out with the bag. But it also asks questions about Seattle being like, well, clearly LAG were willing to sell. Of course, there's always a price that gets the job done. But if you're Seattle and if I'm Octane or if I'm whoever the guy's sitting there, I'm like, well, yeah, once again, this is a change that we could have made a few weeks ago, and now Dallas has swooped in and made it happen, and we're still sitting here at the bottom of the league, Austin.
Yeah, I don't think it was a case of Seattle dropping the ball on that one. Just gut feeling here, but Seattle really didn't drop the ball on that one. I guess, but I think Dallas was just really aggressive in going out and getting him and just making that deal happen. And I mean, you even saw it, like a lot of people were saying if the deal would have been done, it would have been done right after the major. But it took a week? It took a while to even get it done. So Dallas must have been really putting the pressure on and like keep trying for a while now. And if you're LAG, I still don't agree with letting him go. I think Vivid's was your centerpiece. He was a real bright spot on the team. I think. I mean, I would have loved to put him on the roster again next season if I'm their GM. Like instantly, just put him right back in and build a team around him that he wants. And I don't know. Does it hurt LEG long term? Who knows? Maybe they come out and splash in a free agent market and they get someone just as good. But it definitely would have been a nice building piece to kick it off. So I don't know.
That's what I thought the plan was, man. Like, come
Yeah.
on. Well, that's what they were doing this season.
Without being in their camp, it's so hard to judge the deal because obviously they're pretty committed to the 4 that they have right now. I don't know if they think the season they must think they can still make champs pretty well if they keep improving, and they did have some improvement in the last stage, so they must just think this next offseason we're either going to reset or something along that lines, and we'll be able to get a superstar slayer for our SNG elsewhere. So it's a risk, I would say. It's definitely a risk if you still had him under control for next season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just some final comments really on the Dallas side of this. Like the Vivid, as you said, Vivid doesn't necessarily bring an incredible amount of communication or whatever. He's just there to put some pressure on the map. And that might be exactly what this team needs in the sense that clearly there were some serious disagreements between how Huke wanted to play the game and how the rest of the team wanted to play the game. And Huke is he can be pretty vocal in the communication and such. And clearly there was a lot of clashes going on there. And Vivid's probably a guy that doesn't bring any of those issues, any of that baggage. Krim can kind of just let's say, look, and if I'm Vivid as well, I mean, if you're any player that's relatively up and coming, you haven't maybe won a championship yet, you haven't been on a top team, you get the opportunity to play with Krim, that is that's one of those shots that you're gonna be the best version of yourself you possibly can. So I'm expecting fireworks out of that SMG duo, but I mean, you look at any top team in the game, they have their ARs, at least one of them is consistently going off, or both of them are consistent. That has not been the case for Dallas, and I think that Krim needs to step up. I think that Illey needs to step up, and if they can, then they can compete, because behind the top 4, it's obviously wide open, and they can easily become a top 4 team again, I think, if they play their cards right going forward. We'll talk about exactly the group they're lying in a couple of minutes' time here. Let's talk then about Douglas Censor Marte, because he was certainly in the news this week and was lapping up all the opportunity he got to take advantage of it, as he tends to do. And yeah, certainly for good reason. There was a lot of discussion. I mean, when Seattle were looking for a player, Doug was like, okay, it's my time to get into the league. He's, I mean, he was talking on stream about some of the players in the league, some of the other, the organization owners were like, look, I think you deserve your shot. Apparently someone told Octane that they should get him, one of the players in the league. And Octane, of course, then didn't decide to go down that direction at the end, unfortunately. He's also been talking that he's signing for an org or something, or at least an org wants to bring him on. Not 100% sure who that is, whether it's even happening. Questions still remain. The question for me to you, Austin, is if you are a team like Seattle, like a Paris, do you think about getting Doug? I know that obviously Everyone thinks it's just a joke, but I'll give a proposal for why it could be a good idea. Okay, if you're struggling, right? Let's say you're Seattle. I don't really see many of those players, if any, being on their team next season. You need to build a future-proofed lineup, right? And Doug, like, obviously, he has the other factor about him that he has an incredible brand and he's going to bring a crazy amount of eyeballs. So there's that obviously to consider if I'm considering, okay, how do I actually create a profitable business here? At the same time, there's players on Seattle right now, and I mean, Octane, you could argue, is one of them, but pretty much all the players on the team have not really played, I guess with the exception of Brustini, with younger, up-and-coming talents, right? They've mostly played, I mean, Gunners as well, I guess, with the Aldi United squad, but generally the leaders of that team have not been ones that have nurtured up-and-coming talents. However, a player that like Doug that's been in challenges for quite a while, I think you can say the same thing about a guy like Parasite, been in challenges, had some experience playing with a lot of amateur players that have gone on to do good things, and has experience, helping those players become good. Because if you are a guy like Doug who maybe doesn't have the talent that you used to, it's like, all right, or maybe the same talent, but the talent around you's got better. It's like, all right, I've got to help nurture and grow these guys to actually get on a competing team, and that's what these guys have done really well the last couple of years. So if I'm Seattle, all right, let's bring in Doug, decide get him to try and build some young talent through the challenger scene to actually have a roster which actually not only does it bring the Doug factor, but also you might actually have more success building some amateur players up in the future than you have today. So that's just a case for why I bring Doug in. Not necessarily sure I would make the move, but I can see a reason why it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, Austin.
See, I saw that Doug was kind of teasing or like just like joking about joining Seattle. And I was just thinking like I mean, they're pretty much out of the playoffs. You bring him in and then like all eyes are on you. Like you're the talk of the
Absolutely.
town and everyone's gonna be watching you. But your season's done with, right? You're not it's just done. And so if you do that, like I don't know. Like if I'm Persini or Gunless or Octane, I wouldn't do it. I would be pissed if we did do it because that just means you're kind of like quitting on the season. But as an org side, like it could be worse. Like could be could be worse because like right now, like you pick up Classic and well, that might be the best move for your team's future. Kind of, I would argue. Um, People are looking at it as like you're recycling the same old talent. You're not really improving. So it's kind of tough on that front, but. I it could be worse than Doug Censor Martin, I guess. So I would not have hated to see it happen because it would have just been fun to watch, I guess.
Yeah, no, as a fan of the game, I'd have loved to see it. I think that that's the thing. If you bring in Doug as the fourth man on that team, everyone just knows it's chalked. And I think like you could argue it's pretty disrespectful to some of the amateur players that have been at the top that deserve a spot ahead of Doug. Like I think that's certainly a fair point. However, if you are Seattle and you're probably thinking, all right, it's already chalked, we're getting rid of a load of these players at the end of the season. You were talking, Austin, like a couple of episodes ago, the fact that right, if Octane doesn't stay, like what if we just arrange some buyout now before he gets to the end of the season, maybe we get less money for him, right? That's an option you might consider. So if you're doing that, and this is something that there's like a 1% chance the teams do, but you could, if your season's chalked, just be like, all right, we're just going to wipe the roster now at the start of stage 5, bring in Doug, get him to like try and bring up some amateur players or whatever, have a incredibly entertaining season with like Doug and Haggy on your team. I don't know, bring in Methods or something. I don't know what you want to do, but like you could do that for stage 5 and actually try and build a roster which not only is going to provide some entertainment value, but also maybe have some players that actually have a chance of nurturing some up-and-coming young talents that clearly your team lacks and has been the major hurdle for this team the last 2 seasons. So, I don't know. Those are kind of my 2 cents on that. We'll talk about another crazy change now, and that is Huke, right? The Los Angeles Thieves. There is so much to dive into here. It's tough to even know where to begin. So many questions. First of all, I guess we'll just break down exactly how this has transpired. About this time last month, Dallas Empire benched him off the team after a victory against the Paris Legion. I'm pretty sure, however long ago, 5 or so weeks ago now. Then he obviously gets benched off the team. Remarkable things ensue. Crimsix is talking about the mini-map, then there's talks about comms being bad, and then we're like, okay, whatever, maybe they'll just try out the FeLo for a little bit, then bring Huke back in. Doesn't happen. Thieves swoop in there. Other teams were considering the change as well. Thieves swoop in there with the big bucks. They bring Huke onto their team, chuck him into the starting lineup for TJ after they just looked very good indeed, and just beat OpTic actually, I'm pretty sure the day prior to or 2 days prior, then they made this move, or whenever exactly it was. So they were looking great. They bring in Huke, and then they go 1-3 since Huke is in the team, including a pretty humiliating defeat to the Ultra. They lost, of course, to the Mutineers in the winners round 1, which is pretty much an unacceptable defeat if you want to be the best team in the game. Now, of course, if you're Thieves, you've made an incredible amount of big balls plays. Let's just say that the testes on JCap and the guys are, something to behold, to be honest. He's benched the guys he's benched on the team are remarkable. And anyway, they make another move, and Huke there, I don't know what Azuma said last night, like 800k or whatever cash they put on the line to get this guy on the team, is now benched off the team just 2 weeks after they initially brought him in. Now, I get it, Austin. The previous team was performing better than the Huke one, but at the end of the day, you're not necessarily giving Huke the time to prove that he could work with this team, which means, why have you just splashed out $800,000?
Okay, so there's so much to unpack with this. I want to start off by saying, Huke is an extraordinary talent. He is probably one of the best SMGs in the league. He's up there with almost anyone. Individually skilled, he's probably better than he'd be top 3, top 4. So he is a talent. But what Krim alluded to when he got benched from Dallas is that he makes questionable plays on the map, and he might not be the best team player. He obviously has great comms by what we've heard in the listens, but this game you get punished really, really hard for each mistake that you make. And let's say you're in a perfect setup, you're in a perfect hold, and you just give away a life, and now it's 4v3. It's way easier to break that way. So I get that he might have been making some questionable plays on the map, and that might be hurting the team's performance and consistency. And I think that's what Krim was alluding to when he said, look at the minimap. But now that Huke has been bitched by another coach that I hold really high regard for, because now it's been Rambo and JCap that have now benched him. It's a big red flag for me personally, just because I hold those two in such high regard. And obviously, if you get benched by those two, and within a month, pretty much, it's pretty concerning. There's just a lot of questions that get raised up. And the fact that he did get benched after spending what Zuma said, 800,000, the fact that he got benched in 3 weeks after spending that kind of money, that's also a huge red flag. And I've heard things, but I'm not going to say them because I don't know if it's true. I'm not in those teams. I'm not around Huke, so it's not my place to speculate. But there's just red flags there for me, even with the extraordinary talent that he is. But I understand that those guys are really, it's it's my way or the highway. The 100 Thieves org itself is very success driven. If you look at other esports, their first Valorant team was let go rather quickly after no results. Their CS team, past COD teams, past Clash of, I think they had a Clash Realms team, gone instantly after finishing last place. So they're very performance based. So I don't know. There's just so many questions that I have because it's not like we got a Bryant Saint and Jake Reppin video after the move, where they just literally explain everything. So there's just so much questions that need to be answered. But at the end of the day, LA Thieves, obviously they hold Venom pretty high, based off of practice. He's a very, very good communicator. Kenny said he's the best one he's ever teamed with. So I guess Venom's in there. Draza has been very consistent. Kenny, very consistent. So those two aren't going anywhere. So it was always that second SMG that they're trying to find that last piece of the puzzle. And I guess TJ, while he might not individually be in the best form in this game, he still makes the correct plays on the map frequently. So maybe they are valuing that over the raw gun skill. So it's tough. Like, do I think they're going to be able to beat the top teams in the game, like the Torontos, the Atlantas, the Chicagos, the New Yorks? I don't think so. I just think they lack just a little bit of firepower to consistently put up good, like, great results versus them. But uh, it's tough. Um, it's tough to see this going like long term and being a success for LA. But obviously, like, I'm not in their camp, so I really don't know. Maybe it was really bad, and I just don't know. So I don't know. I feel like these orgs should be opening up and sharing a lot more for us, just so everyone's not speculating. And maybe like, and you know how speculation, and 99% of it is false. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's just it's tough. It's a tough position for everyone involved, honestly.
So much to say on this. I mean, that's the thing. This it's just so weird that both changes from Dallas and Thieves, we don't really have a straight answer. Like from Dallas, we never really got an answer, and from Thieves, it was like, oh yeah, performance, we lacked consistency or whatever. Which, okay, fair enough, but like at the end of the day, as you say, it seems like, especially based on JCap's tweets, that Venom is basically setting the team, and I think he adds a lot to the team. And as you say, if Kenny really likes him, that's the thing. It's not just Cap. Like Kenny's the star player. He's obviously also calling a lot of the shots. I imagine those two are some of the lead communicators, a lot of these decisions. So he's clearly very much on board with Venom. Droz has been great, and Huke doesn't like replacing Droz doesn't really make sense role wise. So like it seems to me that Huke is probably just going to be benched for the rest of the season here, to be honest, unless they decide to bring him back for TJ, because I don't really think they're going to get rid of Venom at this point, which is just so incredible to think about. Like, when has there really been a big name blockbuster move? This guy comes off like the world champion, reigning world champ, comes off the winning roster from last year, goes on to another team that's looking to become the best. 2 weeks later, he's off the team. This to me says like well, incredible amount about like Huke as an individual. I think he's, unless it's some sort of personal thing going on, like he's got to take a serious personal look at himself and his own performance and like what he's doing on the map, I guess, because that was a big discussion, right? Okay, he's not making the right plays, he's going on these flanks that aren't necessarily helping the team, and this type of stuff is obviously very important. You could argue that you can't get away with it in 4v4 like you could last year in 5v5.
Oh,
There
100%.
was already like red flags to me being raised. Well, I mean, especially when they got worse with Huke, to be honest, after the move, especially because there's never really been a team that Huke had success on until last year Modern Warfare on the Dallas Empire. Every other team with big name players in his entire career was like tragic or they got poor results. And it's like 2 years ago, if you'd have asked an average member of the COD competitive Reddit who the most overrated player in COD is, they would have said Huke, like almost all of them. Because even though he was gassed to high heaven by the pros, never got any results. Last year, finally proved he could do it, but okay, it's one title, it's 5v5, it's a Modern Warfare, it's with playstyle, I don't really know. And now it's not working. You've got benched off two top tier teams by two great coaches within, as you say, like a month. It's like, well, hang on a second here, even though there might be other reasons involved, it's like if I'm paying that much money, I'm not just benching Huke for no reason 2 weeks later. I'm giving them a chance to improve and work on the team. They've only played like 4 matches or whatever. So just the fact that that hasn't happened and the rest of the team just want him gone is like, I don't know, man. And if I'm a Huke, I've got to be like, I've got to have serious thoughts about like, how I improve my game or what can I do, because it's not like he's the big dog star power guy on the bench that can come back. I mean, Slasher's sitting there as well. Temp got benched earlier on. I mean, there's some serious well questions and implications for this. And I guess the next thing I wanted to go to then was there was some discussion regarding what do Thieves do with Huke, right? Like, do you sit him on your bench? He obviously wants to play. Does another team want to get him? The problem is, if I'm another team, I'm just spectating this from afar, looking at like, well, hang on a second. I mean, these lads have literally just got benched off Dallas, now benched off the Thieves. Why do I want to buy this guy? And if I do want to buy, I sure as hell aren't paying anywhere near what Thieves paid for his buyout. I might, just see what I can do. Maybe Florida consider it. But if I'm Thieves, like, do I get rid of him? Like, I don't even know where to put this, man. I don't think you can.
I think like LA's kind of in a tough spot. I said this before. I think LA, there was like only like literally 2 to 3 teams that could afford Huke's buyout right now, which is pretty crazy to say, but one of them just bought the player. And I can tell you right now, one of them's not looking to make a change. So it's like, I don't know where he goes to where you get your money back, because I don't think you can. I don't think you're
I get
making
your
that
money
return
back.
back. And two, I don't think you let him go, period. As I said at the beginning, Huke is a legendary FPS talent. Whatever he's going through right now, maybe it's just this game. It's just not meshing well for him. Because if you remember, he was really good at stage 1, but even in the stage 1 major, he didn't do very hot. And I know the series versus us, he didn't do too hot. And stage 2 obviously had the issues starting the show. And obviously, I don't know. It's just he had the issues for the stage 3 major with LA. I still think he did pretty well for the circumstances he was in. So I hope he stays on the team. And what I hope LA might do is try different combinations of the SMG trio that they have and see which one works best. Because I think that that would either you're right or wrong. You find the best combination of the three. So I kind of agree if they would do that, but I don't think you let Hook go. I think you figure it out with him, whether it's in next year's game or coming back in the lineup this year. Obviously, you can't make roster changes after stage 5. So, but what you can do is if you have people as your substitutes, you're able to sub them in and out. So, if the team doesn't improve with Venom and TJN, then you still have opportunities to see Slasher, whoever in the lineup by stage 5 or at champs. So, you definitely keep him. I would not sell him yet.
Yeah, there's no. I'm not just gonna take a $500,000 loss like a month after I just signed the guy. There's no way. And it just doesn't make sense as a business decision. Surely, like you paid the money for him for a reason. He can obviously be a valuable asset to a team, but that's the thing. Like clearly, his teams take time to get going. I guess you could argue, and it's time that maybe you don't have, and it's maybe patience that the team doesn't have in general. So I don't know. So many questions, as you say. It's going to be really interesting to see how it develops going forwards. Because with so much talent there on the bench, it's like, what does Huke do? Does he go and play challenges? One question I honestly wanted to raise is regarding Valorant, because you guys might remember at the end of the World Championship, right? Like after it was going back to 4v4, Huke was like, I don't want to break up this team. I'll go and play Valorant. And like, but I don't even know. Like if no one wants to get him, could he just go and wig it in another game? Clearly a talented player. I don't really see it happening, but I mean, he said he would do it after last year's champs. He was the world champion. I don't know, Austin. Like,
Yeah, I don't see it anymore with like how the Valorant scene's kind of like
yeah,
developed
that's
already.
true.
But honestly, like what would be crazy is if they make like a B team, because they got what? Hook, Slasher. I think that's it on their bench for now, right? They don't have
Yeah, because they
temps. They don't have
sold
anyone
Temp.
else.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if they made like a B team to make challengers, and then this had Hook and Slasher just running challengers, and like whatever roster, like their active roster, whatever they're switching, maybe you even can switch your, have a 6-man lineup or a 5-man lineup, which has never been done before. But maybe maybe they can start like experimenting with that, just so you don't just have talent just sitting on the bench, withering away. Because as Slasher likes to say a lot, like right now, like eights is not happening a lot. I don't know why personally, but eights are just not happening a lot. So these guys are not getting a lot of practice. So if there is a chance you do another roster change in the future, like I don't see why not. You just have these guys play challengers, and at least in the challenger cups, and just to get reps. I don't see it. It couldn't hurt if they can get to like just imagine like Zinni, Zinni slacked Hook and Slasher running challengers, man.
That'd be funny, man. I mean, but I agree, absolutely. This is the problem with having the players on the bench that like aren't playing, because when you then do want to get Hook back into the team, if you do, you run the risk of him, like he hasn't played for months. He hasn't really got any practice playing with the team. You've got the top players in the game playing day in, day out with their consistent squads. Like, clearly we've seen Hook needs some time and some guidance to get to a point where he can be a star player that can take over games. So, this is why I just can't see him coming back for the rest of the year, as remarkable as that is to say. But
Side note,
speaking, of course, of well, go on, Austin.
this is why we need academy rosters, because anyone that watches League of Legends, the academy roster and the main roster, you can free fill the lineups whenever you want. So a lot of times you'll see like an academy player come into the main lineup just to or try out to see if they're the real deal, if the team is kind of struggling. And if you could just have an academy team right now, at least there are players that you have on the bench, you're getting practice and you're getting use out of them. And you can stream these academy matches. Like that team would easily make the elite, which is good for your org, and you can broadcast that and you can see if they're catching form and then put them in, kind of like how Toronto wanted to use their B team last year. This is why we need academies in the future.
Yeah, I agree absolutely, Austin. And I mean, speaking of those teams, let's dive into the stage 4 groups because here we go. Group A, FaZe, OpTic, Thieves, Minnesota Rocket, Paris, and Seattle. Group B is New York, Toronto Ultra, Dallas Empire, Florida Mutineers, Los Angeles Guerrillas, and the Ravens. Initial impressions kind of interesting because Group A, pretty sure that Paris and Seattle going to be a tough time for them putting up a fight. Thieves could actually be still once again better. I mean, they beat OpTic last stage with the TJ team, and Rocket we think are going to improve as well with Major Maniac. So not going to be the easiest time for your boys over there in Group A, I don't think. I think it's going to be a battle really for the third spot. I think that FaZe and OpTic should, if they play like they did at the major, should really have not too many difficulties getting top 3. But to me, it's pretty much a battle between Thieves and Rocker for that third spot in the group. That's kind of how I see it on the surface here.
Yeah, I think Group A is a very hard group, honestly. Um, I think even Seattle isn't bad. They're not a bad team. So the fact that they were picked kind of last, same with London. I think both of those teams are actually pretty decent. Um, I think Group A is like a kind of like a gauntlet for us. Even with no Huke, LA is going to be fairly good. They're always going to be really competitive. Minnesota with Major is actually going to be a major S&D threat. I think S&D is going to be killer. So if you're going map 5 with them, you're in trouble. OpTic is obviously OpTic. They're finding form. As I said the other day, or before the majors, being in the losers bracket was the best thing for them. They were able to find their rhythm, find their confidence, and improve. So I think pretty much all of the 5 other teams in our group are actually going to be very, very hard to beat to go perfect in this next stage.
It's going to be tough for sure. Yeah, I'd be surprised if you guys managed to go 5-0, but I mean, well, maybe I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know. You guys are pretty good. But yeah, I agree. I mean, especially on the London side, to me was interesting the fact that they got picked last into Group B because to me, I mean, with Afro and I'm still not necessarily sold on this Alex4Z thing, but the Afro move I think can actually make London even more of a threat than they already were. Like I'm actually really excited to see what they can do here in the Group B. It's great that we get to see New York versus Toronto. That's a series I'm very excited for. We've also got Dallas thrown in here as well. Like we think the Vivid team is going to improve. Florida are in a weird spot because obviously they want to do decent to lock up, to get more likely that they're going to make it to champs. But without making a roster change, I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll be fine, but it's like the team's still super inconsistent, right? And it's like if you're going to actually get top 3 in this group, you probably need some consistency. You're going to need to be at least one of New York, Toronto, or Dallas. I think they can do that, but it might not be so easy. Then you've got LAG in a bit of a weird spot, and then London, I think, is certainly a dark horse. So Group B to me is probably the more interesting one because especially Dallas, you're not really sure what's going to happen with them. Are Ultra going to be able to maintain their level? Is New York's other game modes going to improve? I mean, lots of questions I think in Group B, to be honest. I think that maybe even the second, third spots can kind of go a number of different directions. Maybe New York and Ultra will just prove to be too good once again.
Yeah, I definitely think New York and Toronto is going to finish at the top of the group. I am actually really interested in the third spot because honestly, London could make a run here for that third seed, as long as I'm not sold, as you said, on the Alex4Z thing, but Afro's pretty good. Paul's been frying, and Shawnee's been pretty consistent on the slower AR role. And I do have a lot of faith in Florida as like a dark horse team, but not consistent, if that makes sense. Like I feel like they could go into almost any major and knock out some major teams just because they have that threat in them. But they're just not consistent. So it's gonna be really interesting to me to see how Dallas fares against both of those teams. If they can beat those 2 teams, and if they lose to New York and Toronto, then I still consider that an improvement and kind of a success if they come out with this third seed. Honestly.
Yeah, I think I'd be inclined to agree for sure. It'd be great to see if there's some upsets in that group. But Florida obviously are off 0-6 Like they just got completely destroyed in the last 2 matches they played at the major. So they've got some questions to answer for sure. The next thing I wanted to get into was the kind of meta, not really meta shifts with Sin. I wonder how it's been going in scrims. But obviously the Krig received a buff, which everyone's kind of mind blown at. Gets even better. Of course, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how good the ARs are. You're always going to need 2 subs at least in the respawns. So I mean, maybe the meta won't change too much, but we have seen Dashi talking a fair bit about the FFAR because that now got an additional buff to its damage, so that if you get a headshot mixed in, you kill in 1 less bullet. I've been using it a little bit in League play, and even though I'm struggling to control the recoil, I need some more practice with that. Still, it does absolutely melt if you find it in the right spot. And obviously players like Dashi can shoot it like a laser beam. So I wonder if we'll see that be used even more than we did before. I'm not sure how much it's going to necessarily change the meta roster, if anything at all. But still, something to keep your eyes on, because always teams benefit, and well, some teams get better, some teams have a difficult time when any of these small little tweaks happen.
Yeah, honestly, but when the Krieg is as good as it is, there's just no place for the FFAR. The Krieg it's by far the best gun in the game right now. It's not only is it laser beam, great hip fire, it
Yeah.
moves just as fast as the SMG, I believe, which is pretty crazy to say. Might even be faster, honestly, but the Krieg is just so good right now. There's just no place for the FFAR. If you use the FFAR over the Krieg, it's like you're nerfing yourself, honestly, even though the FFAR is actually really good right now. And as you said, there's always going to be 2 spots for SMGs because the AK-74U still beats it up close. So, while I like it, I don't see you're going to get that in. But for other changes in the game, we saw Standoff come in. I was expecting Standoff Hardpoint to make it in, even though it was kind of we did use it a bunch in practice the last week. It was iffy, to say it best, but the devs were saying they are interested in fixing the spawns and making it better. So I don't know. How do you like the checkmate for SnD for Standoff, and did you think we should see a hardpoint map go still?
Yeah, no, good questions. I mean, I've just seen a tweet from Crone saying that they're working on like changing spawns for P2 and P4 on Standoff. I mean, it's something I'd love to see. Obviously, I guess we've only got stage 5 now to make that happen, but still, I think our hardpoint map set is okay. Like, I don't necessarily think we needed Standoff per se. I think it's a pretty decent map set, to be honest. I'd have liked to see it, but you know, if there's some issues, not too much time to figure them out. It's how things tend to be. And obviously, Trek are incredible how receptive they are, right? Because if Infinity Ward decided to just remaster Standoff, that's how it is, unfortunately, lads, for the rest of the game. But thankfully, Trek are on the ball here and maybe going to make some changes that makes it viable for Hardpoint. Search and Destroy, I think, very interesting because I don't know. Maybe I think Miami fundamentally is a better search map. Like it kind of has to be because at least both bomb sites are viable. At the same time, it's a bit weird. It's a bit big. The visibility is pretty grim, and I might actually prefer to watch Checkmate, right? Like, if from a viewer's standpoint, Miami, I don't know, loading into Checkmate is also kind of dull, but there's more to Checkmate in terms of, I don't know, I guess the engagements are very similar, but it's maybe more visually appealing, which is kind of why I maybe prefer watching it. If there was a game 5 in a series, I had to pick between a Miami and a Checkmate, I'd probably prefer to watch the Checkmate. Now, for the pros perspective, I think this is probably the right call. I am intrigued to hear your thoughts, Austin, on whether, like, what you think from your team's perspective, because there's 2 teams that had great records on Checkmate. You guys were 7-1, OpTic was 6-2. I think it's worse for OpTic in the sense that you guys also have Moscow, where you're undefeated right now, 8-0. So you don't really have an issue with not having another backup SnD map. OpTic, on the other hand, are in a tough spot because they don't play Miami since they got bodied by, or yeah, you guys bodied them way back in stage 1. They haven't played it since then. And either they ban it or like the other team just doesn't pick it. And I mean, I'm pretty sure Scump still doesn't have a kill on Miami yesterday this entire season, right? Because he was 0-6 in that map. So he's probably not too happy about heading back there. So that's the thing. With Checkmate gone, the OpTic was 6-2 on. Their best SnD map outside of that, they're like 6-5 in Moscow or something like that. So that's like their other kind of go-to. And their other maps they're pretty bad at. So like if you're OpTic, I think there's questions. For you guys, you'll probably be fine because I mean your search and destroy has been outrageous. But for OpTic, it's like, all right, your best search and destroy map is gone. You've got to either get good at Miami or get good at Standoff, sorry. And I think, to be fair, we probably won't see much Miami. We'll probably just see a lot of Standoff. That's kind of my guess. And maybe it doesn't matter too much as long as you're good at Standoff. But it's interesting how this is going to affect different teams, Austin. I think like you guys and OpTic on paper are the teams most badly affected by this, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, the switch for Checkmate, like, yeah, I agree. I would have definitely have liked a map to come in to replace Miami because honestly, like everyone's arguing whether it should be Miami or Checkmate. I think it should have been Miami and Checkmate because I think they're both this horrible. I will say at least on Checkmate, usually the better team won. Just because it's more straight up gunfights, it's not as ratty, so it's not. Even though it's bad for strategic purposes, it's very ratty, and you can just or it's not very ratty. It's very like gunfight oriented, very one on one. So it's just whoever's the better team usually won that. That's kind of like what I kind of learned as the season went along. But Miami is very ratty. It's very timing based. It's very large. It's very dark. While people do like it because there's two bomb sites, like I don't think having two bomb sites makes it a good map. It just makes it. I guess it just makes it a map. So I was hoping, even though we just don't have time, I was hoping we would try out like APOC SnD or I think it's Yamauto or the snowy map SnD because that's kind of like laid out like payout from Black Ops 4.
Yamantau or something, right?
Yeah.
Like
I would have
payload,
just
you mean?
liked.
Payload, did you say? Because I kind of know
Well,
what you mean
it's
about
kind of
that.
laid out like payload, like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
map. So I don't know. I would have just liked something to trial instead of Miami because I think Miami's a D tier SnD map, even though Checkmate's right there with it. So I have no gripes with that coming in for Checkmate. For Hardpoint, though, a lot of people are kind of upset that it didn't come in for Hardpoint, but I agree. I think our Hardpoint map set's actually pretty fine. Like people were saying for APOC, but APOC honestly it plays pretty well. The spawns work. There's no like head scratchers that you see on that map. So I like APOC. That sentiment has been pretty much shared with most of the league. Um, Garrison and Checkmate, I think they both play fine. Like, the current meta on Garrison is actually pretty fun to watch. I don't know how you feel about that, but and Checkmate Hardpoint actually works pretty well. Like there's two money hills, there's one mixy hill, like two mixy hills, but it's just a good combination of hard to break hills with mixy hills, which usually tends to make the viewing experience pretty decent. There's one map, Raid. Raid Hardpoint was actually it could have been replaced. I think a lot of Raid hills are just money hills, which I think is a problem, even though everyone's kind of stuck in the allure of Raid being, Raid. I do think a lot of the hills are very hard to break. Like P2, P3, P4 are all money hills. When you are correctly set up in P5, that's also a money hill. And when on the second rotation, you can really pin people back when you're on P1. You can pin them all the way back in garage. So you can make any hill a money hill, which is both good and bad. But overall, I mean, I feel like our hardpoint map pool is fine. And with the current way Standoff was, I just didn't see it putting itself in the meta quite yet. Maybe in stage 5, but even then, you're kind of too late in the season. So
yeah,
that's kind
exactly.
of how I feel.
I agree with the hardpoint situation being okay. Like I like Checkmate for it. I think the Garrison has been. We've seen New York do some really interesting things on the map, and the way the meta's evolving in terms of holding P2 from the back. In a sense, you get the rotations. We see the great teams such as New York doing some incredible stuff where they'll hold P5, spawn trap you out the back, then they'll hold P1 for the full 60, then they'll rotate to P2, contest that, get about 20 seconds, then they'll rotate to P3 and just string together a whole beautiful rotation, which makes a crazy skill gap on the map if you can execute it effectively. So that's the kind of stuff why I like that map. And I think Apocalypse is good as well. So I don't really complain. I mean, Standoff probably is, at least was back in the day, my favorite map like of all time. So I would of course love to see it, and we get to see it in Surge. So at the end of the day, it can't be too bad. But yeah, let's move on. Briefly wanted to touch on these All-Star games. Thought this is kind of funny. I mean, we see once again aBeZy. Well, not once again, but aBeZy takes the victory this year. Cellium, of course, won it last year. I don't have any thoughts on this because the way I see it, like I kind of always think these are like 50-50s, but in a way, you kind of see the players that are winning and getting to the finals. You're like, okay, probably these are the best players. I just think it's interesting to see that 2 years in a row, it's a FaZe guy that's won. I wonder if next year we'll see Simp get up there. RST's the year after that, Austin. It would be, it was fun to watch at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun to watch. I really wish they gave us more off time with it. Like, for anyone that watches the MLB, like you get like a whole like week when they have the All-Star game, so you can like kind of like mid-season refresher, because those All-Star events were like Saturday and Sunday all day, so it like
Mm.
ruined practice. And so now we only have like 3 days to tighten up on Standoff SnD before the stage happens. But and like this season's honestly been like a grueler. Like it's just no days off, just practice all the way since like November to now. So it's been like a really long season. So it would have been really nice that if we had like an extra like off week in between. But overall, the All Star matches were they're fun. They're just something nice to have in between the stages. Honestly.
Yeah, I agree with you. The last thing we'll do before we finish the episode, a couple of questions from our Discord. If you'd like to add some questions and, well, get us, I guess, featured your thoughts on the show, then join the Discord link down below, all that good stuff. There's a channel called Podcast Questions. First one comes in from Trix asking, does Hydra have a chance of getting rookie MVP or does Insight have it? Interesting conversation really about rookie MVP in general or like rookie of the season because it was very much open, I guess, a couple of months ago, but now there are clear front runners here, right? I mean, you've got players that not only are, I mean, Insight, first of all, I think has got to be top of the list right now. He comes into a team like Toronto that obviously were in a bit of a tough spot and methods, they were kind of mediocre. And he just comes in and immediately this team becomes one of, if not the best teams in the game. And by the end of, end of stage 2, wins the championship. So incredible stuff. At the same time, the Hydra shout is interesting, right? Because things are getting spicy, certainly. Because if, to me, still Toronto are a better team than New York, we'll see them battle this time around. If, I mean, I don't know what it'll take for Hydra to overtake Inside in terms of season MVP or rookie of the year, let's just say. Also, season MVP is also up for grabs for both of these guys. But yeah, thoughts on that, Austin, real quick? Because, I mean, I guess if New York and Hydra don't win an event, let's just say they come second every event for the rest of the season. Hydra's a monster. Does he get past Insight, even though Insight was a rookie and also won an event? It's an interesting discussion.
I don't think so. I think it's Insight's award to lose right now, just because he's won a major. Not only that, I think he's been more consistent across all 3 modes. Like if you look at Hydra, like he's been performing pretty well, like really well in hardpoint. We're yet to see like the full form in SnD and control. I know we saw that one crazy map where I think where he went like 10-1, but I definitely want to see like more consistency on those other 2 modes across the board. But they're both like phenomenal, and honestly, like you can lump in Standy in there as well. Like I think Standy and Hydra are like you could just cycle them out at 2 right now. I think if Hydra in New York win a major and maybe place really well, like place over Toronto at the playoffs and consistently put up numbers across all 3 modes, and he might be able to overtake him. But right now, like Insight has been like crazy this year. Like definitely one of the best like diamonds in the rough that you could find, and I've just been super impressed with not only like how like great he plays at SnD, but like every kill he gets as the slow AR is still pretty impactful, which is pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah, I agree. It's just so much impressive talent in this league right now. And the final question comes in from Julie. Who would you guys say is the most improved player? For me, it's Bance based on the last couple of years. Keep up the great work, guys. I very much appreciate that. So, yeah, I mean, Bance, I think, has got to be the clear shout here. I don't know if there's anyone else who really comes to mind right on some of these teams because Bance is an interesting one in the sense that not only has he improved dramatically from last season, but also from the start of this season. There's not many players that are rough stage 1 and just became a monster after that. I guess there are some thoughts that come to mind, but it's somewhat tough to say. Like, there's some players that have got somewhat better, and but a lot of them are kind of in a similar spot. I guess you can look at Prestini when he was looking particularly good during stage 2, but there's no one that's really been incredibly consistently improved like Bant has. I mean, maybe I'd even make an argument for Kleenex or something, just because just seeing, of course, Cammy was a monster last season, and so was Kleenex for a time, but like from the middle of last season clinics to what he's doing now, not just statistically, but in terms of pressure and the eye test as well. I think I'd give him a shout, but I don't want to give all the Toronto guys the awards. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Austin. I think it's an interesting point. Oh, are you muted? Oh, is it me?
Yeah, no, it's me. Personally, right now, I think it's between aSum and Vance.
aSum's a good one.
Last year, aSum, it was pretty well for that Minnesota team. He performed that entry role and was I thought he was pretty good, honestly, for that team. But I know a lot of people thought maybe he wasn't the star SMG on the team. He wasn't like the main factor to their success. But this year, honestly, like aSum is like, for me, he's probably one of like an MVP candidate. If I can pick like 5 MVP candidates, I think he's probably up in that 5. I think while a lot of people look like to Hydra for their success, which is obviously he's been very, very impactful for the team, I think aSum budding into this superstar role on the team has been like so impactful for them. And I think he's leaps and bounds above what I saw in Black Ops 4. He's just continued to just grow and grow and grow and find his pacing, find what he wants, his objectives on the map are, and he plays pretty well. And for Vance, I mean, this guy is he's doing it all for that Toronto team. He does a lot of the dirty work. He's not there to be the star slayer, and even though he's not putting up like ridiculous stats, when he played in the grand finals versus us, he was a superstar. And I feel like every time they win and like play really, really well, a lot of it is like the team is just playing so well cohesively. And I think like as one of the leaders on the team, I mean, you can attribute that to him. So I think the last time we saw him really, really at this level was what IW. So he's had like a rebirth in his career the last like 2 months, honestly.
Been crazy to see. So anyway, yeah, well, thanks for joining me once again, Austin. Great episode. I mean, wow, so much going on right now. I'm sure this time next week we're going to have equally much things to discuss what's happened in the first week of the CDL stage 4, of course. So yeah, thanks all of you guys for watching at home, listening on whatever platforms you might happen to be catching this podcast on. Leave us rating, all the good stuff for the algorithm. You know the drill at this point. So yeah, thanks for watching as always. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next time.